that grading and being graded feels really lousy. It feels really bad. It can be really upsetting from both the perspective of the person doing the assessment and the person being assessed. My name is Derritt Mason. I'm an associate professor in the Department of English, and I'm currently an educational leader in residence of online and blended learning at the Taylor Institute for Teaching and Learning. I think the most substantial change I made to my teaching and learning practice during COVID was that I radically rethought and redid the way I assess in all of my classes. I found that grades during COVID really felt like they were a measure of privilege. So which students had the privilege of time and space and health and access to technology that would allow them to succeed in an environment where we were suddenly rapidly transitioning to online teaching and learning. And so it made me want to move away from traditional grading practices. And that's when I kind of discovered the ungrading movement, we might say, within higher education, and found myself really drawn to some different ungrading techniques that I started implementing into my classes. My definition of ungrading, it's not like a fixed set of techniques or practices, but rather it's an ongoing conversation about assessment, about grading, and about power dynamics within the classroom that should be, again, ongoing and taking place throughout the course of a term with your students involved. And so ungrading ranges from eliminating grades entirely, if that is possible in the context of a classroom, which generally it isn't. In most cases, prioritizing feedback over grades. Also methods like contract grading, where what students need to do in order to get a certain grade, the criteria are laid out very clearly from the start of the term, and students know what they need to do to get an A or a B or a C in the class. To other self-assessments, so students reflecting on their own learning and assigning themselves grades. So it's also about finding ways of centering learning and finding modes of assessment that feel meaningful and also feel good and prioritize instructor wellness and student wellness. And I think that COVID certainly accelerated a lot of those conversations because so many of us were not doing well at all during that time. Jesse Stommel asked a question in his work, which is, what does it feel like to grade and what does it feel like to be graded? And my answer to both of those questions in a number of situations, including circumstances that I can reflect on from my own experience as a student, is that grading and being graded feels really lousy. It feels really bad. It can be really upsetting from both the perspective of the person doing the assessment and the person being assessed. Because in my mind, I was transforming my classroom for the better. I was giving the students a gift, I was giving myself a gift, I was centering learning, I was taking away some of the pressure of traditional modes of assessment, I was allowing students to take risks and take chances. And in my mind, I'd theorized everything and rationalized everything perfectly. Of course, what I didn't realize is when you then enter into the classroom and you're like, this system that you're all familiar with, I'm throwing large parts of it out the window, and here's something brand new for you. I'm gonna have to re-explain the rules. I'm gonna have to, in my mind, again, this was all great, but I think it produced in students, rightfully so, a lot of anxiety that I hadn't necessarily anticipated. And so I realized I had to do more work foregrounding conversations about assessment, about grading, before kind of going in there and I think in their eyes blowing everything up, right? So I teach at both the undergraduate and the graduate level. I teach classes that range from 150 students at the undergrad level to 8 to 12 students in graduate seminars. What I started by doing was I had the good fortune of teaching a graduate class in winter 2022, so kind of coming out of COVID. And that's the first class where I really attempted to say to my students, we're working within the system where it's like, you're going to get a grade at the end of the term, like we can't kind of escape that. But all of the work that you do this term, I'm gonna provide feedback. We're gonna have one-on-one conversations in the middle of the term and at the end of the term about how the class has been going for you, what the classes look like, how you feel like you've been doing on your assignments, but you're not gonna get a grade on any of your assignments. I really wanted the focus to be on conversations with students about what they were learning, about what their learning goals were for the class, and how they were managing to achieve those learning goals throughout the course of the term.
So in 2022, I was the graduate teaching assistant for Derritt's course, Literature for Young People, English 396. I think for the model, one thing that was nice about ungrading is you're implicating the students in the process of their own evaluation. I think that's really important because often you can deliver a course outline or a syllabus and that's the last it's ever seen. So in this system, you really have to be aware of what the expectations of the course are, but also be cognizant of what your goal is for the course. So I think that's something that I've actually brought into my own teaching, is taking these goal-setting ways of initiating a course and saying, what do you want to get out of this course? What are your goals as a learner? And then that's helping me in my pedagogy and delivering course content as well now.
You know, Derritt had provided at the beginning like course goals and things that he wanted us to learn. So we had a couple check-ins throughout the semester just to say, okay, here's how I think I'm meeting these goals, or here's what I need to do maybe to reach those goals better. For people who get validation from grades, for you to be part of the grade making process is kind of taking away from that validation, because suddenly it's something that you're giving yourself. And for someone who relies on like a professor to give them that validation, I think it can be a little bit unnerving or just unfamiliar. But I think it's a really good exercise in kind of redefining your motivation as a student.
I think at first it was certainly more work, but what I'll emphasize is that it's work that felt better, right? I didn't have the same kind of negative affect bound up in slapping grades on assignments with feedback. Students generally, studies have been done, pay attention to the grade and not the feedback. And then having exchanges with students if they were unhappy with their grades. It removed all of that. So it just felt better. So this term I taught a class called Advanced Studies in Young Adult Literature, and it's a 400 level English course. So the students are primarily third and fourth year undergraduate English majors. And I did teach this course prior to COVID, and it had a fairly, I would say, in terms of English, maybe conventional structure of having a smaller essay at midterm and then a longer essay at the end of the term. So now I've taught this course this term, and the way that I've structured it is that that final essay is scaffolded with smaller tasks throughout the entire term. So there are 4 primary course components. You can earn up to 3 points in each. So if you receive 12 points, so the maximum number of points, you receive an A. 11 points is an A minus, and so on and so on. And so these scaffolded tasks, again, are complete or incomplete. If they do all of them, they get the 3 points. But it also gives students the opportunity to be a little bit flexible and choose what portions of the course they want to maybe not complete. If they have a really busy term, if they have other commitments, they can opt out of a task without a huge impact on their grade. And the impact is always transparent to them, right? So if they're shooting for 12 points and they're like, you know what, I just don't have time to do the 4-paragraph draft, I'm gonna opt out, they know they can still get an A minus in the course if they complete all of the other tasks. In some of my classes too, and this makes me really happy, I teach a few classes on video games, and I give students the opportunity to create a game using a free platform like Twine or like Bitsy. And so some students come into the class never having played a game before, and because the class, they don't necessarily receive grades on all of their projects, many of them have felt at liberty to take risks, which they might not otherwise have taken. And to me, that's one of the huge rewards of this mode of assessment. Again, students do a reflection piece, and ultimately, at the end of the day, they do get a grade, but the game itself isn't graded. And honestly, I don't know how I would grade something that, a lot of the things that students submit, they submit amazing work, but often, it's their first time making a game. Games might be glitchy, they might not work properly, but they learn a tremendous amount doing it and are trying their hands at a new skill.
We took this course from this idea of we did these journal entries and we built these writing assignments, and we had this goal setting to begin the course. And as the course concludes, you're looking at these items and you're creating almost a portfolio of 3 items, and you're writing a reflection on them, and you're kind of capturing in these reflections the essence of the course. But I think what was unique is that you chose the platform and the means of expression. So you could do conventional prose reflection, you could do a podcast, you could do a PowerPoint presentation, you could do a video. And I think it's really nice to have these options of expression, because 1, it's skill building, and 2, it gives agency. So I think it's really important to have that freedom, especially once you've built the core skills to underscore that freedom.
I think the main thing that I would suggest that again comes with a bit of a paradigm shift, and at least for me, it required a lot of reflection, is to think about starting a course from the place of trusting students. And it seems like this is something that we might do naturally or organically. But when I revisited my own course material through the process of reconsidering what I was doing, I was struck by the language that I was using in my course outline, which seemed to suggest that I was coming from a place of not trusting my students, right? Often I would find myself designing courses using language that assumed that everyone was going to try to cheat or trick or plagiarize or commit other kinds of academic misconduct. And that sets a tone for the course, right? If you're telling your students through the language of your course outline that you're onto them, you're surveilling them, you're monitoring everything they're going to do, that invites them into the course in what I would describe as kind of an unfriendly way.
One of my critiques kind of the way we teach undergrads is that they're condescended to a lot of the time. And because of that, they don't have that investment in their own learning because they know that they're already being treated like people who are just here to get a certain credit. But I think that to extend them that trust would be so valuable. And I think it could really change their opinion about how they're learning at a really critical time in their career. If I had been given this opportunity a lot earlier, I might not have developed such a complex around grades. And, if I don't get this grade, it means that I'm not good enough and that I didn't work hard enough and blah, blah, blah. But maybe that just means that my learning goals were different than the instructor's learning goals.
So that's the first step I would take is approach course design from a place of trust. Think about how the language of the syllabus can offer students an invitation into a course and not a set of rules that are if you do this, then this will happen. These are the consequences for bad behavior, but rather, what are we going to learn together? And how can we trust each other to move through this course, and also the trust that we're going to place in one another as a community of learning. I find that engagement has improved. I think that, again, COVID has presented some challenges across the board with engagement that I'm still struggling with. But I do find that, students generally respond well to the changes that I've made. Starting from that place of trust really has reframed what I'm trying to do in the classroom, and hopefully students feel the resonances of that.